My name is Natalie Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and a few months ago, I paid $6,000 for my little sister's dream honeymoon, only to have her stand up at family dinner, call me a loser, and say it was cheap. If you'd told me that's how it would go when she first asked, I would have laughed in your face. Then again, if you'd told me I'd agree to her request in the first place, I would have laughed at that too. Because my sister Amanda has always been a lot. Growing up, she was the one who needed everything bigger, louder, more dramatic. Birthdays weren't celebrations. They were events. Breakups weren't endings. They were apocalypses. She treated life like a stage and everyone around her like supporting actors. I learned early on that the safest place to be was in the audience. Her first marriage didn't change that. Brandon, husband number one, was the kind of guy who acted like job was a slur. He flunked out of trade school, quit every gig after 3 weeks, called anything that required a uniform beneath him. Meanwhile, Amanda worked double shifts and still came home to cook, clean, and soothe his ego. "You don't understand him," she'd say anytime anyone raised an eyebrow. "He's just misunderstood." No, he was just lazy. But I bit my tongue and kept my distance. I helped once, when they were on the verge of eviction, paid a month of their rent so they wouldn't move back in with our parents, and immediately regretted it when she posted a selfie with the caption, "We made it through the storm." Like I hadn't just drained my savings to keep her afloat. When their marriage finally imploded, it was both tragic and predictable. Brandon cheated. Of course he did. Amanda called me sobbing, not because she'd been betrayed, but because everyone was going to see she'd failed. I drove over with ice cream and a bottle of wine, sat on her couch while she cycled through, crying, raging, reliving. It was hard not to say I told you so. I didn't, but I thought it. So when she met Kevin a year later, I was skeptical by reflex. Kevin was different, quiet, responsible, the kind of man who actually had a career and not just a LinkedIn profile. He worked in marketing, the boring kind with graphs I pretended to understand. He opened doors, asked how you were, and actually listened to the answer, made sure Amanda's gas tank was full without being asked. For the first time, I watched my sister with someone who didn't treat her like his mother or his maid, and I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. They got engaged after 6 months. Whirlwind, of course. Amanda announced it with a boomerang of the ring and a caption so long you needed to click more 3 times. My mom cried. My dad grumbled about doing it right this time. My boyfriend, Mark, squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Maybe this will be good for her." "I hope so," I'd said, and I meant it. When she called to ask if I'd help plan the wedding, I told her no, not because I didn't care, but because I knew how that movie ended. Amanda and logistics were oil and fire. She pouted, then pivoted. "You can just contribute then," she said. "Whatever you want, as my maid of honor." I wasn't her maid of honor. That role went to her influencer friend, Tessa, who had more followers than common sense. But I wrote a generous check anyway and considered my part done. I should have known that wasn't the end. A week later, she called again. "Natalie," she said, voice syrup sweet. "Can you talk?" "About?" I asked, already suspicious. "The honeymoon," she said. "We found the perfect trip to Hawaii. 9 days. Flights, bungalows on the beach, fancy dinners, activities. Like, picture a movie. That's what I want for us." "It sounds nice," I said, and it did. For them. "There's just one problem," she continued. "We kind of underestimated how much it would cost. Kevin's trying to be all responsible about money, and we don't want to start our marriage in debt, you know?" She sighed theatrically. "So I was wondering if you'd be willing to help out a little." A little. I could already feel my wallet flinching. "Amanda," I said carefully, "we just helped with the wedding. That wasn't exactly pocket change." "I know, and I'm so grateful," she said, not sounding grateful at all. "But this is different. It's our start. I really want it to be perfect." Beneath the entitlement, I heard something else. Fear. A woman whose first marriage had crashed and burned, clinging to the idea that if she could at least script the honeymoon right, maybe she could control how the rest of the story went. Mark was sitting next to me on the couch, pretending not to listen while very much listening. He mouthed, "Your call." I hesitated. My relationship with Amanda had always been like walking a tightrope. I loved her. I also knew she had a bottomless appetite for help. But Kevin seemed good for her. And selfishly, I wanted to believe that if I helped them start strong, maybe, just maybe, she would see me as something other than the built-in backup plan. Okay, I said finally. How much are we talking about? There was a beat of silence. Then she said it, casual as if she were asking for a ride. 6,000. I almost choked. $6,000. It's not that much, she said quickly. Flights are crazy right now, and the resort is all inclusive. Mostly. And we wanted a couple special excursions. But we'll cover some of it too. It's not like we're asking you to pay for everything. Spoiler, she was. I could have said no. I should have. But the image of her smiling in a flower lei with Kevin, starting over in a way that didn't involve screaming matches and slammed doors, tugged at me. Fine, I said, more to my own surprise than hers. I'll help, but this is the last time, Amanda. I mean it. You're the best, she squealed. Seriously, Nat, you won't regret it. I regretted it before I even hit confirm on my bank transfer. Flights, bungalows, dinner packages, 2 ridiculous excursions she cried over, snorkeling and a helicopter ride over the volcanoes. By the time I was done, $6,000 had vanished from my savings like a magician's trick. Mark raised his eyebrows when he saw the final total. You're sure about this? No, I admitted. But if it keeps her from going back to Brandon, it's cheaper than therapy. He didn't argue. He just kissed my forehead and said, You're a better sister than she deserves. The weird thing was, once they left for Hawaii, it was like they'd vanished into a void. Amanda, who practically lived on Instagram, went silent. No check-ins, no airport fit photo, no sunset selfies, no living my best life with my best friend captions. Nothing. It's weird, right? My younger cousin Viv texted in our separate, saner family group chat. She posted 6 stories about a free brunch last month, and now, radio silence? Maybe Kevin finally staged an intervention, Mark said. Social media detox. My parents thought it was charming. They're just enjoying each other, my mom said. Not everything has to be online. Personally, I didn't really care if she posted or not, but a tiny part of me, the part that had just paid top dollar for those bungalows, wouldn't have minded a thank you story with a tagged mention. Call it petty, I call it human. 9 days later, they were back. We'd all agreed to meet at my parents' house for dinner. My folks loved any excuse to gather everyone in the same room. This, plus a new son-in-law and a fresh set of tan lines, was their Olympics. When Amanda and Kevin walked through the door, I braced myself for shrieking and gift bags full of souvenir shell necklaces. Instead, she walked in quiet. Tan, yes. Beautiful, yes. But her mouth was pressed into a line, and her eyes had that stormy, sharp look that always meant trouble. Kevin, on the other hand, looked content, relaxed. He hugged my mom, shook my dad's hand, clapped Mark on the back. Dinner started fine. My mom fussed over the roast. My dad made corny jokes. Viv asked about the flight. For the first 20 minutes, Kevin did most of the talking. The snorkeling was incredible, he said, eyes lighting up. We saw sea turtles, these bright blue fish. It was like swimming in a cartoon. And the helicopter ride, my dad prompted. You did that, right? Kevin grinned. Yeah, over the volcanoes. The pilot dipped us low over one of the craters. I thought Amanda was going to crush my hand. He laughed, glancing at her. She didn't laugh back. He pulled out his phone and showed us photos. Sunsets over the ocean, a dinner table right on the sand, candles flickering in little glass jars. Amanda in a white dress, with a flower lei, smiling at the camera, hair blowing in the wind. My mom practically teared up. It looks like a movie, she said. Your sister really went all out for you two, Kevin. What a wonderful way to start your life together. Everyone nodded. Even I felt a little warm seeing them like that. For a moment, I thought, okay, maybe it was worth it. Maybe this really did buy them a clean slate. I looked at Amanda, waiting for her to finally meet my eyes and say the 2 words I hadn't heard yet. Thank you. Instead, she set her fork down, stood up, and said, loudly enough to cut through every conversation at the table, Are you kidding me? The room went silent. A 9-day vacation, she scoffed, glaring at me. That's it? I blinked. Excuse me? Who does that? She demanded. Have you even been on Instagram lately? People take month-long trips to Europe, yacht parties in Santorini, overwater villas in Bora Bora, and we get 1 bungalow and some basic restaurants? My stomach dropped. At first, I thought she was joking, that this was some kind of badly timed bit, but her face was stony. Her eyes were cold. Amanda, my mom said carefully, it looked beautiful. It was fine, Amanda snapped. But don't act like it was some grand gesture, Nat. You're such a loser. She pinned me with that same sharp look she'd used on exes, bosses, anyone who told her no. If you couldn't afford a real honeymoon, you shouldn't have offered. Mark's fork clattered against his plate. Viv's mouth fell open. Kevin stared at his lap like he wanted to disappear into the mashed potatoes. My father looked between us, baffled. My mother shot me a panicked smile, the kind that begged, "Please don't make a scene." Something in me that had been stretched for years, pulled and pulled and pulled, finally snapped. "Wow," I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "You're amazing." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go." "No, really," I cut in. "Let's just make sure we're all hearing this correctly." I stood up, my chair scraping back. "I paid $6,000 for your honeymoon," I said evenly. "I covered your flights, your beachfront bungalow, your basic restaurants, your turtle snorkeling, and your volcano helicopter ride. $6,000. And you stand here in front of our parents, your husband, and call me cheap?" Amanda crossed her arms. "If you're just going to throw it in my face." "The fact that you even feel entitled to complain about something like that is insane," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "Do you have any idea how many people would kill for that kind of trip? Do you have any idea how spoiled you sound right now?" She scoffed. "You're being dramatic." And that did it. "Dramatic?" I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Okay, let's talk about dramatic." I took a step closer to her. "You want to talk about being cheap? Fine. Let's talk about how you've never paid me back for anything in your life. Not for the help with your car in college. Not for the rent I covered when you moved out on your own and forgot your first 3 payments. Not for the money I gave you after your divorce because you said you were broke and Brandon left you with nothing." Amanda's face went red. "I've always helped you," I continued, "because you're my sister. Because I stupidly believed that if I just did enough, maybe one day you'd appreciate me." I shook my head. "But this is beyond selfish. This is disgusting." She opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. "And Kevin," I said, turning to him, "I actually feel sorry for you, man. You seem like a good guy. But if this is how she treats people who go out of their way for her, you're in for a rough ride." Kevin's shoulders hunched, his jaw tightening. He didn't look at me. My mother finally found her voice. "Natalie, honey, maybe we should all just—" I held up a hand. "No, I'm not done." I turned back to Amanda. "Let me be crystal clear," I said. "If you keep acting like this, no one is going to want to help you. Not me, not mom, not dad, not anyone. And by the way, having 11,000 Instagram followers does not make you a celebrity. So stop acting like the world owes you something. You are not a princess, Amanda, and I'm done pretending you are." The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. For once, even Amanda had nothing to say. She stood there, cheeks flushed, chest heaving, eyes flashing with a mix of rage and something that almost looked like shame. My dad cleared his throat. My mom reached for her wine like it was oxygen. Viv stared at her plate. Mark stood up, tossed his napkin down gently. "We're leaving," I said, grabbing my coat. As we walked out, I heard Amanda mutter something under her breath, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in my life, I didn't follow the sound of her voice. I walked away from it. In the car, as we drove home through the quiet streets, Amanda's words replayed in my mind like a broken recording. "Loser, cheap, shouldn't have offered." Mark kept his hands at 10 and 2, knuckles white. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "You know that, right?" "I know," I said, but my chest still felt tight. He glanced sideways at me. "You know what bothers me the most?" I wiped at my eyes. "That I'm down $6,000 and a sister?" "That Kevin just sat there," he said. I frowned. "Yeah, that too." I'd always thought of him as quiet, steady, the calm to Amanda's storm, but tonight he looked like he'd rather have been anywhere else. At first I thought it was embarrassment. Now, watching the way his face had closed off completely, the way he'd stared at the table while I was being shredded, there was something else there. "Do you think he agrees with her?" I asked. Mark shook his head slowly. "I think he's scared of her." That thought lodged itself in my brain. And in the days that followed, as the anger cooled into something more complicated, I realized there was more wrong with my sister's perfect honeymoon than her lack of gratitude. And unfortunately, I was about to find out just how much. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before my alarm even had a chance. I rolled over, groggy, and saw Mom lighting up the screen. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Part of me was still humming with the adrenaline of the night before. The other part didn't want to walk back into Amanda's storm so soon, but avoidance had never really worked with my family, so I answered. "She came over," my mom said without preamble. "No hello, no how are you, just straight into it." "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Amanda," she sighed. early this morning. She's been crying since she got here. She says you humiliated her in front of everyone. I stared at the ceiling. Well, did she mention calling me a loser and saying $6,000 was cheap? She was upset, my mom countered, like that explained everything. She says you blew it out of proportion. She's very fragile right now, newly married, under a lot of stress. Did she say why Kevin didn't defend the fragile little princess? I asked, the bitterness in my voice slipping out before I could stop it. There was a pause. She says Kevin is barely speaking to her, my mom said quietly. She kept saying everything is ruined and that you don't understand what she's dealing with. That stopped me more than anything else. What she's dealing with, I repeated. What does that even mean? I don't know, Natalie, my mom said, sounding tired. She wouldn't explain, just cried and kept saying you turned everyone against her. Of course, classic Amanda. Turn the spotlight, rewrite the script, cast herself as the victim. Except my mom's tone was different this time. Less convinced, more unsure. I'm not apologizing, I said firmly. I meant every word. I didn't ask you to, she replied. I just think maybe, I don't know, maybe there's more going on than she's saying. We hung up, and I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. Amanda's life had always been an open book, whether you wanted to read it or not. She overshared everything, her plans, her feelings, her arguments, her suspicions. The idea that she was hiding something, that there was something even she didn't want to perform for an audience, unsettled me more than her tantrum ever could. When I told Mark what my mother had said, he frowned. Do you think there's something going on with her and Kevin? He asked. Like, deeper than the usual? I don't know, I admitted, and I'm not sure I want to know. It's not my problem anymore. And I meant it in that moment. I'd drawn a boundary, and I was determined to keep it. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. By midweek, that feeling of unease had grown claws. I found myself wondering about Kevin's expression at dinner, the way he hadn't looked angry so much as hollow, like a man who had stood in storms far worse than some harsh words over roast beef. Finally, I broke down and did what any millennial does when something feels off. I went online. Kevin's Instagram was still private, but that wasn't unusual. He'd always kept a low profile. Amanda, however, was another story. I typed her handle into the search bar and stared when the app spit out, user not found. She deactivated her account? I said out loud. Mark looked up from his laptop. Who? Amanda, I replied. Either she deleted her account or changed her username, and there's no way she quietly rebranded without making a 3-part story about it. The absence of her online was like walking into a room and realizing a loud machine had been turned off. You don't notice the constant noise until it's gone. I tried not to think about it. I failed. That evening, my phone buzzed with a new text. Kevin, can we talk? Just you and me. I have some things to explain. I stared at the message. This was a man who barely spoke unless Amanda cued him. We'd had more conversations about the weather than about anything real. Now he wanted to explain things to me. Alone. Mark glanced over my shoulder. That's not ominous at all, he said. What do you think? I asked. I think if he's reaching out, something's bad enough that he's willing to risk Amanda flaying him alive if she finds out, Mark said. So, if you have the bandwidth, hear him out, but don't let him turn you into a mediator. I took a deep breath and typed back. Sure, when? Tonight, he wrote, I can come over. An hour later, Kevin was on my doorstep. He looked rough. Not in a dramatic way, just worn. His usually neat hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles carved under his eyes. He held himself like someone who'd been walking around with a weight on his chest for so long he forgot what breathing deeply felt like. Hey, he said awkwardly. Thanks for seeing me. We sat in the living room. Mark made himself scarce in the bedroom, the door slightly ajar, close enough to step in if things went sideways. Kevin just stared at the coffee table for a while, twisting his wedding ring around his finger. I owe you an apology, he said finally. For what Amanda said, I asked, or for sitting there and saying nothing? Both, he admitted, eyes flicking up to meet mine, and for asking you to pay for that trip in the first place. Something hot and sharp flashed in my chest. You asked? He winced. We both did, but Amanda's the one who actually picked up the phone. I didn't stop her. So why are you here now? I asked. Because she's upset? Or because something actually changed? He took a deep breath. The honeymoon wasn't just a honeymoon, he said slowly. It was supposed to be a reset. I blinked. You've been married, what, a month? Why do you need a reset already? He laughed bitterly. I know how it sounds. Believe me. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a second like he was searching for the right place to start. Planning the wedding was a nightmare, he said. I kept telling myself it was just stress, that she'd calm down once the big day passed. But he shook his head. She went way over budget without telling me, ignored every limit we set, screamed at the florist because one rose was the wrong shade of blush. She had 3 full meltdowns because her charger was missing. I thought, okay, she's overwhelmed. Weddings do that to people. I said nothing. I'd seen some of those meltdowns firsthand. I'd chalked them up to classic Amanda. But after the wedding, he continued, it got worse. She started accusing me of not loving her enough. Said I didn't do enough to make her feel special. That if I really loved her, I'd just know what she needed before she asked. That's a lot to put on one person, I said. I tried, he said. I really did. Date nights, little gift, compliments, help around the house, everything. She'd be thrilled for 20 minutes and then back to, if you really loved me, you'd do more. He hesitated, then added quietly, she threw a vase at me once. I looked up sharply. She what? Missed, he said quickly. Barely. She apologized afterward, cried, said she didn't know what came over her, and I believed her. He laughed, but there was nothing funny about the sound. I wanted to. My mind flashed back to dinner, to him sitting there, silent, staring at his hands while my sister shredded me. Not shocked, not amused, just numb. When she started talking about the honeymoon, she promised it would be a fresh start, Kevin said. No drama, no fights, just us. I thought maybe if we got away from everything, her followers, her friends, her family, it would reset things. We'd remember why we liked each other in the first place. Did it? I asked, already knowing the answer. By the 3rd day, he said, she was complaining about everything. The room wasn't big enough. The food wasn't elevated. The snorkeling tour had too many other people on it, so it didn't feel special. She picked a fight because I took a photo of her without asking which side was her good side. It was like vacation just gave her new material to be unhappy about. My anger from dinner started folding into something else, something closer to resignation. When we got back, he said, I told her I was done. Done as in? As in filing for divorce, he replied. I stared at him. Already? I know, he said quickly. It sounds dramatic. But it wasn't just the honeymoon. It was the whole pattern. She's not who I thought she was, and the worst part is... He cut himself off, jaw tightening. What? I pressed. She told me last week that she still talks to Brandon, he said. I actually felt my stomach flip. Her ex-husband? Yeah, he said. She told me it was harmless, that they're just friends now, but I found texts. He looked down at his hands. She'd been venting to him about me since before we were even married, he said, calling me boring, saying I wasn't man enough for her, that I didn't fight like he did, didn't yell enough, didn't make her feel crazy in love. She told him she missed the way he made her feel. A cold fury rolled through me. She was trashing you to the guy who treated her like a maid and cheated on her, I said. He nodded. I confronted her. She said I was overreacting, that it was just girl talk, that I was proving her point by getting upset. He let out a shaky breath. So I told her I was done, that we could go to counseling if she wanted, but I wasn't going to be her punching bag. For what it's worth, I said quietly, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of that. And for what it's worth, he replied, you didn't deserve what she said to you either. You were trying to do something good for us. I needed you to know it wasn't really about you. You were just the safest target. He stood, tucking his hands into his pockets. I'm not asking you to fix this, he added. I know Amanda's your sister. I thought you deserved the truth, especially after you helped us so much. As he walked toward the door, Mark stepped out from the hallway, having clearly heard more than I realized. His face was a mix of disbelief and exhausted understanding. When the door closed behind Kevin, he turned to me and said, Well, that's worse than I thought. I don't even know where to begin, I whispered. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, Kevin's words replaying in my head in a loop. The vase, the accusations, the text to Brandon, the honeymoon that was supposed to fix everything, but only magnified what was already broken. By morning, one thing was clear. Whatever was happening with my sister was bigger than a cheap honeymoon. And whether I liked it or not, I was going to have to decide just how much more of it I was willing to be part of. The next morning, just as I was pouring coffee, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Kevin. It was my mother. Again. But her voice, when I picked up, wasn't scolding or defensive. It was quiet, almost frightened. Amanda's here, she whispered, like my sister might hear her from the next room. She showed up before breakfast. She won't stop crying. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Did Kevin tell her? Tell her what? That he's filing for divorce, I said. There was a beat of stunned silence. No, my mother whispered. She didn't say anything about that. Of course she hadn't. Amanda didn't announce disasters until she could dramatize them. If she was hiding this one, it meant she wasn't ready to spin it. What does she want? I asked. I don't know, my mother admitted, but maybe you should come talk to her. I've never seen her like this. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. The thought of sitting across from my sister again so soon after the explosion felt like picking up a glass already cracked down the middle. But something in my mother's voice, honesty, maybe, made me say, give me an hour. When I walked into my parents' kitchen, Amanda was hunched over the table in sweaty pajama pants and a stretched-out t-shirt, hair in a tangled mess. Her face was blotchy, eyes swollen, makeup smudged, even though she'd clearly tried scrubbing it off. She looked small. Not dramatic, not defiant, not weaponized. Just broken. Hey, I said softly, sitting across from her. She raised her eyes. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't glare at me. She didn't posture. She didn't search for an angle. I'm sorry, she said. Not with theatrics, not with angry tears, just a soft, almost childlike apology. For what? I asked, arms crossed. Not as a threat, but as self-defense. For what I said at dinner, she whispered. You didn't deserve that. Her lip trembled. She looked down at her hands. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook just because she finally collapsed under the weight of her own choices. Kevin came to see me, I said. She froze. What did he say? She asked, voice barely above a breath. He told me everything. Her shoulders flinched like I'd hit her. The honeymoon, the fights, the budget blow-ups, the accusations, the vase, I said. All of it. Amanda's throat bobbed as she tried to swallow. He's filing for divorce, isn't he? She whispered. It was the most honest thing she'd said since the wedding. Yes, I said, he is. Her eyes filled with tears immediately. Not the angry crocodile tears she used to manipulate people. These were quiet, heavy, real. I didn't mean for this to get this bad, she choked. I thought marriage would fix things. I thought if the wedding was perfect and the honeymoon was perfect, then I'd be okay. That Kevin would feel enough. You don't get fixed by vacations, Amanda, I said gently. You get fixed by work, therapy, self-awareness. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I don't know what's wrong with me. I ruin everything. I ruined Brandon, now Kevin, and I don't even know why. Oh, I knew why. Our childhood had been a pressure cooker wrapped in a smiley family photo. Our dad praised success, but not effort. Our mom compared us like it was an Olympic sport. Amanda learned early that the only way to matter was to win, and when she couldn't win, she performed. Bigger, louder, more dramatic. But I didn't say any of that. Emotional archaeology wasn't why I was here. I can't fix this for you, I said. I'm not your therapist, and I'm not your safety net anymore. Her breath hitched. I know. But I'll tell you the truth because clearly no one else has been, I said, leaning forward. You treat people terribly, especially the people who love you. And if you don't deal with that, really deal with it, you're going to keep repeating this cycle with every person you meet. Amanda's face twisted with pain, but she didn't argue, didn't deny, didn't deflect. That alone was a miracle. And talking to Brandon behind Kevin's back, I added. What were you thinking? Her head snapped up, eyes wide. You know about that? Kevin found the texts, I said. She looked like she'd been slapped. I wasn't trying to cheat, she said quickly, shaking her head. It wasn't like that. Brandon was going through a divorce, and I thought he'd understand how frustrated I was. I just needed someone to vent to. I stared at her. You told him Kevin wasn't man enough. You don't get to call that venting. Amanda flinched. I wasn't thinking, she whispered. No, I said, you weren't. She broke then. Not dramatically. Not in the theatrical way she'd always cried before. Her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to make herself small enough to vanish. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. Everything's falling apart. For the first time since the day she got engaged, I felt something besides irritation toward her. I felt pity. Deep, aching pity. I reached out and touched the table between us. Not her, but close enough that she knew I wasn't here to destroy her. You have to fix you, I said quietly. Not your image, not your Instagram, not your marriage. You. She nodded slowly, tears dripping onto the wooden table. I'm done bailing you out, I added. I meant what I said at dinner. I'm not paying for anything else. Not your next crisis, not your next vacation, not your next wedding if it comes to that. I know, she whispered, voice cracking. I understand. For the first time, I said, I believe you. We sat there in silence for a long time. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile. Just two sisters, stripped down to something painfully honest. After a while, she said, "I'm going to talk to Kevin, see if he'll go to counseling." "That's your call," I said, "not mine." She nodded again. Then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me completely." I stood. "Don't thank me yet. You still have to do the work." She nodded, wiping her face, and for once I thought maybe she meant it. As I was leaving, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway. "That was hard," she said softly. "It had to be." She nodded. "Maybe this will be the thing that finally makes her grow up." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm done holding her hand through it." My mom sighed. "You've done more for her than anyone." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm done." When I got home, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. A strange, unfamiliar relief. Like I had finally put down a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying for a decade. 3 weeks later, I got a text. From Kevin. "We're going to counseling. Not sure if it'll work, but we're trying." I stared at the screen for a minute. Then I put the phone down and didn't reply. It wasn't my fight anymore. Kevin's text should have been the ending. A neat little bow. A final line in a messy chapter of my sister's life that I had finally stepped out of. But life doesn't do neat bows, especially not with Amanda. For a few weeks, things were strangely quiet. Too quiet. I went to work, came home, watched shows with Mark, helped my niece with homework, and slept like someone who had finally stopped walking on emotional eggshells. No dramatic phone calls, no surprise visits, no guilt-soaked texts. For the first time in years, my days felt peaceful. But peace in my family is always the pause before the next explosion. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, when the weather was too nice, the house too calm, and Amanda too silent for comfort. I was chopping vegetables for dinner when Mark poked his head into the kitchen. Nat?" he said carefully. "Your mom is calling." I wiped my hands and grabbed my phone, expecting something small, a recipe question maybe, or a request to help pick out a gift for someone's birthday. But the moment I answered, I knew. My mother wasn't calm. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even disappointed. She was scared. "Natalie," she said, voice trembling, "you need to come over. It's Amanda." My stomach dropped. What happened? She won't come out of her room. She's barely speaking. Kevin left this morning with a suitcase. He wouldn't talk to us. He just said he'll let the lawyers handle it. I closed my eyes. "And Amanda?" I asked quietly. "She says her life is over." I exhaled slowly. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Mark touched my elbow as I hung up. "Do you want me to come?" I shook my head. "No. If she sees you, she'll twist it into something. I need to go alone." He nodded, worry softening his eyes. "Call me if you need me." When I pulled up to my parents' house, the tension was so thick it felt like walking into a wall. The curtains were drawn, the living room lights dim. The house smelled like stress, cold coffee, stale air, and something burned in the oven hours earlier. My mother met me in the hallway, wringing her hands. "She hasn't eaten," she whispered. "She won't talk to me, or your father." "What about Viv?" I asked. "She tried," my mom said. Amanda screamed at her. And then I saw it. The closed bedroom door at the end of the hall, the faint sound of sniffling behind it. I took a breath, then knocked softly. "Amanda, it's me." Silence. "Amanda," I said again, "I'm coming in." I pushed the door open. She was on the floor beside the bed, knees pulled to her chest, hair a tangled curtain around her face. The blankets were scattered, clothes strewn everywhere, an empty water glass tipped over on the nightstand. Her wedding ring lay on the carpet like she'd thrown it. She looked up at me, mascara streaked across her cheeks. "He left," she whispered. "I know. He's not coming back." "Maybe not," I said gently, sitting beside her. "But you're still here." That sentence cracked something in her. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing so violently I thought she might shake apart. "I ruined everything," she cried. "I ruined my marriage. I ruined my reputation. I ruined—" "Amanda," I said softly, "slow down, breathe." "I thought he loved me," she whispered. "I thought if I kept things perfect, if I kept us looking perfect, he'd stay." And suddenly it hit me. All those years Amanda had obsessed over appearances. All the filters, all the curated vacations, all the desperate need to look like the girl everyone envied. It wasn't vanity. It was fear. Fear that if she ever stopped performing, the people she loved would see her flaws and leave. Brandon had left. Kevin was leaving, and she was unraveling. "Amanda," I said quietly, brushing her hair away from her eyes. "You can't control people into loving you." She nodded, tears pouring again. "And you can't guilt them into staying." "I know," she choked. "I know that now. I don't know how to stop being like this." That right there, those 10 words, hurt more than anything she'd ever said to me. Because for the first time in her life, my sister wasn't blaming anyone. Not me, not Kevin, not our parents, not fate. She was suddenly a child, lost, scared, overwhelmed, searching for a lifeline. And I had a choice. I could be cruel. I could be self-righteous. I could walk away and cement the boundary I'd fought to defend. Or I could give her one last truth. I can't fix your marriage, I said gently, and I'm not going to fix your life. But I'll tell you this. People leave when they're treated badly. It doesn't matter how pretty the pictures are. She swallowed hard. You need help, Amanda, I said. Real help. A therapist. Someone who can help you figure out why you're like this and how to change it. She looked terrified. What if I can't change? You can, I said. But you have to want it more than you want attention. More than you want control. More than you want to be right. Her breaths came in shaky waves. I don't know how to start, she whispered. Start with honesty. She looked down at her ring on the carpet, at the scattered clothes, at the empty glass, at her bare, messy, wounded reflection in the vanity mirror. And for once, Amanda didn't look like a villain. She looked like a woman finally seeing the wreckage she'd caused, and the wreckage she'd been raised inside. I'll try, she whispered. Good, I said, because this is your last chance with me. Her eyes filled with panic again. You mean? I mean, I'll be here while you take accountability, I said. But I'm not bailing you out again. Not financially, not emotionally, not socially. You want a new life? Build it. She nodded slowly. And then, in a small voice that twisted something in my chest, she said, Okay. A week later, I got a message from Kevin. We're going to counseling. I'm not sure if it'll save us, but I'm giving her one more chance. I read it twice. Then I put my phone down and didn't reply. It wasn't my story anymore. Amanda's journey, her therapy, her marriage, her mistakes, were hers alone. For once, I wasn't the fixer. I wasn't the wallet. I wasn't the backup plan. I was just her sister. And that was enough.